Hi, my name is Anna Foster, and this is my application video for the 2025 GHP program. I'll be discussing the overuse and risks of genetically modified crops in agriculture. Plant-based meat alternatives, chocolate, and salad dressing all have something in common. Though you may not realize it, store-bought processed versions of these foods often contain soy, one of the most widely genetically modified crops. The process of genetic modification includes transferring new DNA into a plant cell. This is done through various methods, such as the insertion of particles or viruses carrying the DNA information into the cell. The plant is then grown and developed, and the genetically modified plant's future seeds will carry this new genetic material in their DNA. So, why do farmers choose to genetically modify crops? The most common reasons are to grow plants with resistance to crop eating pests, develop resistance against herbicides used to kill weeds, and develop resistance to crop viruses. With the use of GM crops, farmers save money as they are able to use less pesticides and insecticides when their crops are bug resistant. Crops that are resistant to disease and herbicide are able to be produced more. With decreased costs for the farmer and increased production, consumers have more produce to buy and prices are lower. While GM crops have some benefits for farmers and buyers, they cause damage to the environment and pose a health risk to humans. The adoption of GM crops leads to changes in agricultural practices such as increased herbicide use. Overuse of herbicides can cause weeds to become genetically resistant over time. Also, genetic diversity is decreased since all GM crops are genetically identical. This means that if a disease or pest reaches crops, there is no chance of a genetic mutation to allow for adaptivity, so the crops will all die. There's also a great health risk for humans who consume goods made with GM crops. Glyphosate, a widely used herbicide on GM crops, is a probable human carcinogen. Traces of glyphosate and other herbicides can be found in food commonly eaten by children and drinking water. There's also a risk of contamination into meat products, as GM crops are commonly used as animal feed. Public perception of GMOs is typically negative. According to a study conducted by the Pew Center, 39% of American adults believe that foods containing GMOs are worse for health than foods without, while only 10% said foods with GMOs are better. The same study found that half of Americans who know a lot about GMOs see them as a health risk, and that younger adults were more likely to have a negative view on GMOs. Food labeling impacts perceptions greatly. When ingredients and farming methods are not transparent, consumers lose trust. Foods labeled as non-GMO are thought by consumers to be healthier than those that are labeled as genetically engineered. The widespread adoption of GM crops in the agricultural industry has negatively impacted society's perception of the scientific community. The environmental and health risks of genetic modification, such as decreased biodiversity and the use of carcinogenic herbicides, are not often discussed by producers, and this can lead to distrust from the public. Next time you're in the grocery store, take a second to check the labels of the processed foods, as some of them might contain genetically modified ingredients you wouldn't expect.